So, what we want to do today is really dig into the reasons behind why we procrastinate.
Right.
We'll look at the different ways it can show up in your life, and most importantly, we'll pull out some really practical, evidence-based ways to actually break free from that cycle.
Exactly. It's not about just saying, oh, you're lazy or something. We want to go deeper than that.
Right. So, consider this your crash course in understanding procrastination and getting some tools you can actually use starting today.
Exactly. We're going beyond just labeling it and trying to understand what's really going on under the surface.
So, we've said that procrastination is an active choice, a decision. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's not just passively sitting there and not doing anything. It's literally choosing to do something else, even when you know you should be working on that other thing, even when you know there might be negative consequences.
Okay.
And that's where psychologists often see procrastination as a kind of failure of self-regulation.
Self-regulation. Okay, what exactly does that mean when we talk about procrastination?
So self-regulation is basically your ability to manage your thoughts, feelings, and actions to reach your goals.
Okay.
And when we talk about procrastination, it really often comes down to managing your emotions. Many times, the tasks we put off are the ones that make us feel anxious, frustrated, or even just plain bored.
Ah, I get it. So we're choosing that short-term comfort of avoiding those yucky feelings, even though it might cause bigger problems later on.
Exactly. That feeling of relief you get in the moment, that becomes the reward. And sometimes that's so powerful you don't even really think about the consequences of putting that task off.
Yeah, it's like slapping on an emotional Band-Aid.
Exactly. But of course, sometimes putting something off can be a smart move, a deliberate choice.
Okay.
Like maybe you're waiting for some information, or there's something else that's more important right now.
Right, like when you need to prioritize.
Exactly. And the difference is whether you're making progress. With strategic delay, you're still moving towards your goals. It's just that you're taking a detour. But with procrastination, you're basically stuck.
Okay, so it's not about being idle. It's actively choosing to stall, even though you know you want to achieve the goal.
Right.
So if it's not just laziness, what are some of the psychological things that kind of push us into procrastinating?
There are quite a few things, and they're all kind of linked. But I think one of the biggest ones is fear.
Fear, okay.
Fear and anxiety. And this shows up in different ways, like the fear of failing, of not being good enough, can be really powerful.
Right.
By putting off a task, you're sort of delaying that potential failure, at least for a little while.
I guess it makes sense. Like if you don't try, you can't fail, right?
Right. But of course, procrastination can lead to its own kind of failure.
Yeah, that's true.
And then there's perfectionism, this need to have everything be absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And that fear of not reaching those impossibly high standards, it can stop you from even starting. Like, if it can't be perfect, why even bother?
Oh, I totally get that. You feel like you have to do it perfectly or not at all.
Exactly. And that ties into shame, too. Like, if you don't achieve perfection, you feel bad about yourself.
Right, like you're not good enough.
And there's also the fear of being judged, either by yourself or other people, and anxiety about what might happen, about the unknown outcome.
So it's not just the task itself, it's all this extra baggage we pile on top of it.
Right.
So what about the ability to, like, manage ourselves in the moment? We talked about self-regulation earlier.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. It's hard to resist temptation to, choose long-term rewards over the things that feel good right now.
It's like the marshmallow test, but instead of marshmallows, it's checking social media or watching TV.
Exactly. And then there's how we feel. Like we were saying, if a task makes you feel anxious or bored, you're more likely to avoid it. And if you have trouble controlling your impulses, resisting those distractions becomes even harder.
So it's like a recipe for procrastination. You want to feel good now, and you don't want to feel bad, even if it ends up hurting you in the long run.
Exactly.
What about how we feel about ourselves, about our abilities?
Well, if you don't have confidence in yourself, if you don't believe you can do something, you're much more likely to put it off.
Because you think you're going to fail.
Right. You might think, oh, I'm not good at this, or I'll just mess it up anyway. That kind of self-talk doesn't help. Building up your self-esteem, believing in yourself, that can really make a difference.
Right, because if you think you can do it, you're probably more likely to give it a shot. What about those times when you're just like not feeling it, when something just seems so boring and pointless?
Yeah, that's boredom and lack of motivation, and they're huge factors. If you don't see the value in a task, it's hard to get motivated to do it. Finding ways to make it more interesting or connecting it to something you do care about can help a lot.
So even just changing the way you think about a task can make a difference.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of your surroundings. Being in a messy, distracting environment doesn't help. Phones buzzing with notifications, All that stuff pulls you away from what you should be doing.
It's like our brains are constantly being bombarded with tempting distractions. And I think you said there were a few other things that can make us more likely to procrastinate.
Yeah, like feeling completely overwhelmed. When you have so much to do, you just freeze.
Right.
Or personal problems that are taking up your mental energy. And this idea of feeling disconnected from your future self. So the consequences of procrastinating don't feel real. Oh, and decision fatigue. When you've had to make so many decisions, your brain is just exhausted.
Mm.
All these can play a role. And of course, sometimes procrastination is a symptom of a deeper issue, like depression or ADHD, which we'll talk about later.
Right, so it's this complex mix of things. Now, you mentioned that there are different types of procrastination.
Right.
It's not just one thing, is it?
No, not at all. And recognizing your own style of procrastination can really help you understand yourself better.
Okay.
For instance, some people are chronic procrastinators. It's a habit, a pattern that affects almost every part of their life. But others only procrastinate on certain types of tasks or in certain situations. We call that situational procrastination.
Oh, I see. So someone might be really good at meeting deadlines at work, but terrible at, like, doing their taxes at home.
Exactly. And then there's the difference between active and passive procrastinators.
Okay.
Passive procrastinators basically get stuck. They can't seem to get started, and they often feel guilty and frustrated.
Hmm.
But active procrastinators, they kind of do it on purpose. They might even like the pressure of working at the last minute.
Oh, like they get an adrenaline rush from it.
Exactly. Some people call this purposeful delay, like maybe it helps them focus or be more creative. Then you have people who procrastinate because they're anxious versus those who do it because they'd rather be doing something more fun.
Their motivation is completely different.
Exactly. There's actually this really helpful model by Linda Safdin and Jack McGuire that outlines 6 procrastination styles.
Okay.
They group them based on whether the main driver is anxiety or boredom and frustration.
Oh, I remember reading about these. Let's break them down, starting with the anxiety-driven ones.
Okay, so first up is the worrier. This person tends to not even start things because they don't believe they can do it. Their inner voice is always saying things like, I won't be able to. They might have had bad experiences in the past that make them doubt themselves. So even the thought of starting makes them anxious.
Right, so their self-doubt stops them before they even begin.
Exactly. Then there's the perfectionist. They're afraid of not doing things perfectly, so they put it off because they're terrified of making mistakes. They'll think, if I don't do it perfectly, I'm a failure. It's all or nothing with them.
Yeah, the fear of not being good enough is so strong that they just don't even try.
And then there's the overdoer. This type takes on too much, and then they get overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Their thinking is something like, if I don't do it all, I'm not good enough.
So they're trying to avoid feeling inadequate, but by taking on too much, they just end up feeling even more inadequate.
Exactly. It's a trap. Now, moving on to the styles that are more about boredom and frustration, first we have the crisis maker. This person thrives on pressure. They wait until the last minute because they think that's when they do their best work.
Yeah, they love that last-minute rush.
Right. But of course, this can backfire if something unexpected happens.
Oh, for sure. It's a risky strategy.
Then there's the dreamer. This person doesn't like hard work or details.
Okay.
They'll think, I shouldn't have to struggle to achieve my dreams. They'll focus on the big picture, the fun parts, but not the actual work involved.
Yeah, the ideas is great, but the actual doing is not so much.
Exactly. And finally, there's the defier. They don't like being told what to do. They're rebellious.
Okay.
Their attitude is like, I don't have to do this. Procrastinating is their way of resisting, even if it hurts them in the end.
Wow, so many different reasons why people procrastinate. It really shows that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not. Figuring out your own procrastination style is a great first step.
Absolutely. And beyond these styles, remember, you can procrastinate in different areas of your life. Like, you might be great at work, but terrible at doing chores at home. Or maybe you just can't make decisions.
Right.
So we've talked about why we procrastinate and the different ways it shows up. But what's the real cost of putting things off?
Well, the consequences are huge. They affect your mental health, your work, your relationships, pretty much everything.
Okay.
For starters, procrastinating can cause a lot of stress. You get that temporary relief by avoiding the task, but then the anxiety builds up as the deadline gets closer.
It's like you're just delaying the inevitable, and it ends up making things worse.
Exactly. And you also start to feel guilty, ashamed, like you're letting yourself down.
Right.
This can damage your self-esteem, and in some cases, it can even make mood disorders like depression and anxiety worse.
I can see how that would happen.
It can also affect your sleep, make you feel lonely, and some research even suggests it might be linked to things like substance abuse and problems with controlling impulses.
Wow. I didn't realize it could be so serious.
And people who procrastinate a lot may find themselves blaming others for their delays instead of taking responsibility.
Hmm. That's interesting. So it's not just about missing deadlines, it's affecting your whole mental state.
Right. And there are also the practical consequences.
Right, like what kind of impact does it have on your work or school?
Well, in school, it can lead to lower grades, missed assignments, not doing as well as you could.
Right.
And at work, it means lower productivity, missed deadlines, and doing work that isn't as good as it could be. And this can have real financial consequences, like late fees or missed promotions. And your relationships suffer too. People get frustrated when you're not reliable.
So it's like a domino effect impacting everything and everyone around you.
Exactly. And perhaps most concerning is that chronic procrastination has been linked to negative physical health outcomes.
Really?
Yeah. Increased risk of getting sick, heart problems, high blood pressure, headaches, stomach issues, feeling tired all the time, even things like bad eating habits and not getting enough exercise.
Wow, I hadn't realized it could affect your physical health that much. Heart problems and headaches, that's serious.
Yeah, it's not just a mental thing. It can really impact your whole body.
Okay, so we have a pretty good grasp of the problem. Now let's talk about solutions. What are some proven strategies for actually breaking the cycle?
Luckily, there's a lot we can do, and the research backs it up. I think a good place to start is with time management techniques.
Okay.
Breaking those big, overwhelming tasks into smaller chunks can make them seem less scary.
Oh, that's like the Swiss cheese it method, right? Where you just kind of chip away at it bit by bit.
Exactly. Instead of thinking about the whole thing, you just focus on one step at a time.
Right. So if you have to write a big report, you don't stress about the whole thing. You just focus on, say, the introduction today.
Right. And setting clear, specific goals. The SMART goals method, that helps a lot too.
Okay.
It gives you direction. And have you heard of the Pomodoro technique?
I think so.
It's about working for 25 minutes, then taking a short break. It helps you stay focused. And then there's the Eisenhower matrix, where you decide which tasks are the most important and urgent. So basically, it's all about getting organized and taking control.
Yeah, turning that big mess of work into something manageable.
Exactly. Having a regular routine, scheduling specific times for work, and setting deadlines for yourself, all that helps too.
Okay.
And even if you just commit to working on something for, say, 5 minutes, that could be enough to get you started. Sometimes that initial push is all you need. What about those negative thoughts and feelings we talked about earlier? How can we deal with those?
Yeah, that seems really important.
It is. And that's where cognitive restructuring comes in. It's basically about identifying those negative thoughts and challenging them.
Okay.
Like, if you're scared of failing, you ask yourself, is that really true? What evidence do I have? You try to replace those thoughts with more positive and realistic ones. And you can also reframe the task itself.
What do you mean?
Like, instead of thinking, I have to write this report, think of it as an opportunity to show off what you know. Focus on what you can learn or how you can grow from it.
I like that.
And it's important to be kind to yourself. If you've procrastinated in the past, don't beat yourself up about it. Just focus on doing better next time. And remember, progress is more important than perfection.
Right. So it's about being more positive and realistic in your thinking.
Exactly. And what about actually changing your behavior? What concrete actions can we take?
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in.
One of the most important things is to minimize distractions. Turn off notifications, close those extra tabs on your computer, create a space where you can actually focus,
Okay.
and reward yourself for making progress. Positive reinforcement works wonders.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe find an accountability partner, someone you can check in with, or join a study group. Having that support can really make a difference.
Right, like you're not in it alone.
Exactly. And visualizing yourself successfully completing the task can help too. It makes it feel more real, more achievable.
Mm.
You can also use if-then statements, like if I feel like checking email, then I'll finish this paragraph first.
That's clever. So you're basically planning how to deal with inflation before it even happens.
Exactly.
What other behavioral strategies are helpful?
Well, there's the nothing alternative strategy. If you find yourself avoiding a task, don't let yourself do anything fun until you've made some progress.
Ah, that's tough.
And there's the next action habit, which is all about figuring out the very next small step you need to take and then doing it.
Okay.
Sometimes doing an easy or enjoyable task first can give you momentum to tackle the harder ones.
I like that.
And if you have any small tasks that you can do quickly, do them right away, get them off your list. It helps to prevent that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And sometimes just setting a time limit for a task can help. It creates a sense of urgency.
So you're kind of tricking your brain into focusing. What about dealing with those feelings that make us want to procrastinate in the first place?
Well, mindfulness and relaxation techniques can be really helpful. Becoming more aware of your thoughts and feelings, especially the ones that usually lead you to procrastinate, can help you control those urges better.
Okay.
And learning to relax through things like deep breathing or meditation can help you manage the stress and anxiety that often fuel procrastination. So it's about being in tune with yourself and finding healthier ways to deal with your emotions.
Right. You're taking a moment to check in with yourself before you automatically reach for a distraction.
Exactly. And for people who are really struggling with procrastination, seeking professional help can be a great idea.
Okay.
Therapies like CDT or cognitive behavioral therapy can really help you change your thinking and behavior patterns. And therapy can also help you deal with any underlying mental health conditions that might be playing a role, like anxiety, depression, or ADHD.
It's good to know that there's help available. Now, I know that there's always new research coming out about procrastination. What are some of the most interesting findings you've come across lately?
There are a few really cool areas. One is this idea called the stress context vulnerability model.
Hmm.
It basically says that when we're under a lot of stress, it's harder to control our impulses and manage our behavior, which makes us more likely to procrastinate.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're already stressed out, tackling a big task just seems even harder.
Exactly. And think about the pandemic, all that stress and disruption. It really pushed a lot of people into procrastination.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then there's all the amazing work being done in neuroscience.
Okay.
They're actually looking at what happens in the brain when we procrastinate. And it seems like there's this conflict between two parts of the brain.
Okay.
There's the limbic system, which is all about emotions and instant gratification, and the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for planning and self-control.
Hmm.
And some studies are showing that people who procrastinate a lot might have differences in their amygdala, which is the part of the brain that deals with fear and negative emotions.
Interesting.
There's also this concept called temporal discounting, which basically means that we value things we can get right now way more than things we have to wait for.
Oh, that's so true.
So that instant relief from procrastination feels really good, even if it hurts us in the long run. And the more we give into procrastination, the stronger those neural pathways become. So it's like we're training our brains to procrastinate more.
So the more you do it, the harder it is to stop. That's kind of scary.
It is something to think about.
It really shows how important it is to break that cycle.
Right. And a really interesting study just came out last year from University of Tokyo. They found that people who had an optimistic view about their future stress levels, like how well they thought they'd be able to handle stress in the future, procrastinated less.
Hmm.
But having a positive outlook about life in general didn't have the same effect.
Really? So it's specifically about believing you can cope with future challenges.
Exactly. And that's pretty encouraging because it means we can work on building that belief in ourselves.
That's a great point.
Now, a lot of research is being done on how we can use the internet to help people overcome procrastination. They're finding that online programs, both with and without guidance, could really help, especially for college students.
Okay.
And even just using chat to talk to a therapist can be as effective as meeting them in person.
Wow, that's amazing.
It could make therapy much more accessible.
Definitely. Are there any differences in how men and women experience procrastination?
Some studies suggest that men might procrastinate more than women, and it might have a bigger negative impact on their well-being, especially if they're not students. But more research is needed to be sure.
Okay.
And researchers are constantly looking for those specific things that trigger procrastination.
Like what?
Well, tasks that are boring, difficult, unclear, or just not personally meaningful are more likely to be put off. So the more you know about your own triggers, the better you can prepare yourself to fight back.
That makes sense. Now, you also talked about the role of motivation, self-efficacy, and impulsivity. Can you tell us a bit more about how those internal factors affect procrastination?
Yeah, these things are super important. If you're not intrinsically motivated, if you don't have that inner drive to do something because you find it interesting or enjoyable, you're more likely to procrastinate. And this is especially true in school. It's better to be motivated by a desire to learn and grow rather than just fear of failure or external pressure. Interestingly, some studies have found that if you're really engaged in a task, if you enjoy it and feel like you have control over it, it can actually reduce the negative effects of procrastination on creativity.
So finding something you're passionate about can really help.
Exactly. And self-efficacy, which is basically believing in your ability to succeed, that's a big one.
Okay.
The more confident you are, the less likely you are to procrastinate. And it seems like self-control plays a role here too. People who believe in themselves tend to have better self-control, which helps them avoid procrastination.
Makes sense.
Now, with active procrastination, where people delay on purpose, it might be different. Sometimes those people are actually very confident in their abilities. Maybe that's why they feel okay waiting till the last minute.
Like they trust themselves to pull it up even under pressure.
Right. Now, on the other hand, impulsivity, or acting without thinking, is strongly linked to procrastination. People who are more impulsive have a hard time resisting temptation. It's hard for them to choose long-term rewards over things that feel good right now.
Right.
So even if they want to work on a task, that impulse to do something else can be overwhelming.
So that internal battle is even harder for them.
Exactly. And finally, let's talk a bit more about the connection between procrastination and mental health.
Okay, I think that's really important.
It is, we've already touched on this, but anxiety and procrastination are very closely linked.
Right.
Fear of failure, perfectionism, feeling overwhelmed, all those things can lead to procrastination.
Because you're trying to avoid those feelings.
Right. And then the act of procrastinating itself creates even more anxiety as the deadline gets closer. So it's like a vicious cycle.
You're just making the problem worse.
Exactly. And procrastination is also linked to depression, low energy, lack of motivation, negative thoughts, trouble concentrating. All of those are symptoms of depression, and they can all make it harder to get things done.
Right.
And when you procrastinate, you often feel guilty and bad about yourself, which can make depression worse. So they kind of feed into each other.
It's not always a simple cause and effect, but they definitely make each other worse.
Exactly. And for people with ADHD, procrastination can be a really big challenge. It's often related to their difficulty with attention, organization, and self-control.
Right.
And it can make them feel really bad about themselves. Another interesting thing is that people with ADHD sometimes hyper-focus on things they enjoy, which means they neglect other important but less interesting tasks.
So they're really focused on one thing, but everything else falls by the wayside.
Right. So it's important to remember that sometimes procrastination isn't just a matter of willpower. It might be a sign of a deeper mental health issue.
Right, and seeking professional help is important in those cases. This has been such a great deep dive. It's really clear that procrastination is much more complex than just being lazy or not managing your time well.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating psychological phenomenon. And understanding those deeper factors, the emotions, the thoughts, the behaviors, that's key to making real progress.
And what I'm taking away from this is that understanding why you procrastinate is the first step.
Definitely. Once you know the root of the problem, whether it's fear, perfectionism, lack of motivation, or something else, you can start trying different strategy.
Exactly. There are so many evidence-based techniques out there, from time management to cognitive strategies that we've talked about today.
Right. It's about finding what works best for you and your unique situation.
And if you're really struggling, remember that there's no shame in getting professional help. A therapist can help you address any underlying mental health issues that might be contributing to your procrastination.
Absolutely. There's no need to suffer alone.
So that you think about everything we've discussed today, I want you to ask yourself, what's one small step you can take today, not tomorrow, to move yourself closer to your goals and further away from procrastination?
It's about taking action and making that positive change.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive today.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.